Welcome. My name's Christine, and you're listening to the podcast Coming Up for Air. Ceremony and ritual play a fundamental role in the grieving process. They're not merely nice-to-have traditions. They are psychological and neurological necessities that help the brain process the reality of loss. They help regulate the nervous system and begin that journey of integration. Growing through grief requires that we learn how to direct these energies in order to transform this sorrow, this despair, this deep sadness. A grieving person is weary, emotionally exhausted, overwhelmed in their grief. Remember, grief is all that is internal. It's the thoughts, the emotions, all of it. And we need to move that from within us outwardly. And that's what mourning is for. Mourning is that expression. And so in order to heal, we must mourn. Mourning is the way we direct grief's energies. Ritual and ceremony give us the space to mourn. And in grief, it becomes imperative so that we don't become stuck in that dark shadow of fear and allow fear to dominate. And what we do with ritual when time is set apart and ceremonies that have deep personal or collective significance are performed, it brings in a solemn sense of purpose. It brings in a feeling of mystery. And when carried out with true intention, it evokes a sense of sacredness. Ritual helps direct those energies within. It helps create movement and release. And without ritual, grief can remain stuck in the body and mind. It becomes embodied. And that can lead to complicated grief or trauma. And so there's so much more to why we need to engage in ritual for healing and well-being as we process grief. There is so much more that we can learn and find out now within the field of science that has really been a pivotal component to more deeper healing, if you like. So grief being that process that's required to reconcile our loss, and grief is that internal invisible storm, rituals simply serve as that bridge between the internal world of pain and this external world of reality. So things like, lighting a candle, planting a tree, most people know funerals, they make the loss tangible. So they're giving this abstract pain a physical form that can be seen, touched, acknowledged. They mark this transition from one space, place, being to another. Humans, we need markers to signify change. Weddings mark transition to marriage, to a different life path together. Funeral marks the death of someone beloved, and it is another marker of transition, sometimes to widowhood or orphanhood. But what the ritual does, it's a signal to the psyche. The old life has ended. A new reality is beginning. And of course, it takes us some time to integrate that. But these are really important for us to have, to keep validating for us why we feel what we feel. And this shift from what has been to what is now. Rituals also create a container. Grief is so chaotic, it's so overwhelming. And rituals provide structure, beginning, middle, end, that contains that chaos. For this hour, this time frame, with this ritual, It's like we're saying we're honouring the loss. It marks the element of the sacred. It invites in, if you will, a sacred pause. And this safety allows us as the griever to access these deep, deep emotions without being flooded. The ritual provides validation, and it sends a powerful message to our psyche. This loss matters. This person mattered. This pain is real. And that's really important, because we so easily get into our own minds. We feel that, it's too much. I'm going crazy. Ritual brings in that validation. It's also so helpful where we have disenfranchised grief or grief that's not fully acknowledged. So any lack of ritual can add to that. It makes us feel that the pain is disallowed. And I will be describing lots of different ways that we can integrate and bring in. It doesn't always have to be a big ceremony, but micro rituals, small everyday rituals to help us. So recognizing that ritual is a necessary component to the making of meaning that surrounds our loss. And it's the space then that we can often integrate our own spirituality or religious beliefs. It's a way then we bring in that sacred. And we can allow for grace. Because grace brings in that radical permission to let things be exactly as they are, without that constant internal struggle of this should not be happening. It's an allowance. And it can also bring in a strength that even though we feel broken, open, cracked, we're really more capable. And it has enhanced our capability of receiving light. As you remember, one of my favourite quotes, Rumi, the wound is the place where the light enters you. And grace can only enter through the cracks, not through our armour. And grace is the deep knowing that your value is not tied to something like productivity. So it's not tied to the ability to get over grief or being perfect about that process. You are worthy because you exist, because you are. Grace itself can't be forced, it can't be grabbed or manufactured. It arrives when we stop trying to be in control, and ritual helps create the space for that. If we look at how ritual affects the grief brain, because the brain of a grieving person is often in a state of hyper-arousal, that's fight or flight, or freeze, dissociation. And rituals help regulate this state. So we're regulating the nervous system. Grief itself triggers the fear center, the amygdala. So it keeps the body in a state of high stress. You've got all of those hormones and chemicals pumping out, cortisol, adrenaline. And when we engage in a ritual, something repetitive, rhythmic actions common in rituals, it might be chanting, drumming, breathing, walking silently, lighting candles. This all stimulates the vagus nerve. It shifts the nervous system from sympathetic, that's fight or flight, to parasympathetic, rest, digest. And it physically lowers heart rate and blood pressure, creating that biological state where healing can occur. There's another aspect to being in this grieving process. In fact, Someone only mentioned this yesterday in one of my groups. How they go into loops, get stuck, because the grieving brain will often get stuck in rumination, replaying the event, the what ifs and the pain, that emotional distress. And this is the brain trying to solve the unsolvable. And so if we can take that pause to just do a little ritual, because ritual requires focused attention, specific task, whether that's breathing, lighting a candle, maybe bringing flowers, arranging them, or reciting a prayer or a poem. But when we bring that focused attention, we take that pause, it forces the brain to switch from that mind-wandering rumination to a focused action. It gives the brain a break, allowing for mental restoration. Another component is that when we've had traumatic or sudden loss, that's going to fragment memory, and the brain will really struggle to integrate the event into coherent story. And rituals will often involve sharing of memory or storytelling, and that helps the memory center, the hippocampus, literally encode the loss as a narrative rather than a fragmented trauma. So it's helping the brain move from this is happening to me to this happened, and here is how it fits into my life. So it really encodes memory and narrative. We know that grief depletes neurotransmitters associated with joy, with connection. And so when we have shared ritual, community gathering, where we're coming together with compassion, often hugging, singing, and these actions trigger a release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and dopamine, the reward pleasure hormone. And so the result is that there is now a sense of safety and connection, and it reminds our brain, I'm not alone, I'm part of a tribe, I'm validated, my grief is real. There's so many different ways that we can create ritual, from transition rituals that I spoke about, something like a funeral that marks that shift from before to after, to little daily micro rituals that really help us provide stability and a sense of control. Something like lighting a candle every morning, or taking a moment to visit where a loved one's body is placed, such as a grave, or playing a certain song at a certain time. A ritual can be very creative, writing letters, painting, and a lot of rituals are very communal. Again, reducing isolation, validating our loss. And then there are other rituals that can be engaged in that involve dance, yoga, walking, movement. And what these rituals can do for us, they bring back the sacred, something our indigenous peoples and our ancestors held to. The acknowledgement that we're more than our body. There is a mystery here. Great mystery, higher power. Aligning that sacred element within to that higher power. An allowance of grace. Because when we do not engage in rituals, however small, we will suffer, because the brain needs to be able to categorize the loss. We become more confused and we get more anxiety. suppressed grief, when that pain, that deep emotional pain is pushed down, brings in somatic symptoms, or even more of an outburst later. It can create more isolation without public acknowledgement. We feel invisible, leading to perhaps depression. And the brain needs these certain events to make sense. Otherwise it's unfinished, unable to move toward integration. So how do you go about bringing in ritual? Not all traditional rituals will fit. The loss of a beloved animal companion or an estranged family, we don't want perhaps the large community gathering, but you can create your own meaningful, small micro rituals. There's a particular one that we commonly do at different times of the year, and that's a silent walk, a mindful walk. And you can do that in a labyrinth, which is walking that specific path in silence. With each step we're acknowledging what's going on inside, acknowledging the beloved, and then with every exhale we're releasing. It can be something as simple as gathering together things that represent our beloved, writing down little memories as they arise, placing those in a box, placing maybe some jewelry, things they've written. Doesn't matter what it is, it's whether it's meaningful to you. Things to touch, to hold, gathered with love and placed together in a special space, and that we bring out on certain days. Perhaps one that you have heard me talking about before is a letter burning ritual, where we write down everything that we wish we've said, we wanted to do. It's all the what ifs. And we release through burning. I will be going through a very, very specific, longer version of a releasing ritual. So look for that next week. At this time, I'm going to just share a couple more little rituals with you. One that is quite powerful that I've used individually and in group is something called burden basket ceremony. And I've witnessed and seen incredible shifts occurring. I specifically remember a lady dealing with her husband's traumatic death and how she was able to release the burden of guilt that was really embodied with her as quite a trauma. And the impact for her of releasing was so significant. It marked a major shift into transformation and renewal. And I remember it so well because of how she responded to this. It was hard for her to engage in the actual ceremony. And the ceremony is very simple. It's taking a pause, we light a candle, and we have a little basket or a container in which to put in what we would like to unburden ourselves of. And so it's just simply something written out and placed with intention into a container. And the impact of that, of letting that go with intention and with recognition for oneself, compassion for self. And this is something that you can do actually at the edge of a creek, using rice paper, throwing your burdens into the river, into the creek, or literally picking up a pebble, a stone, and letting that be the symbol for the weight that is so heavy that you wish to unburden. And with intention, releasing it, throwing it into the river. So by engaging in ritual, you're not just doing something, you're rewiring your brain. You're moving out of a state of trauma and fragmentation to a state of integration and healing. It's the bridge. And that bridge allows light to enter the cracked heart. Carrying out ceremony and ritual allows the space for grace to enter. It is our sacred pause. Ritual is a vital component for mourning, for connecting to the deep pain of grief, opening to allow release so we might heal. And so together in this moment, let's just create a very small, short little ritual together. You can imagine that I have lit a candle. I know you can't see it, but there is a candle lit here. That light signifying the love that is within the heart. And I'm recording this on Mother's Day. And I struggle. I miss my mother. So the light holds her memory and her love for me. And I breathe. And I breathe with intention. Breathe with me. Inhaling for 5. Holding and releasing for 8. Inhaling. Holding and releasing. And we'll do that again. One more. Inhale. Holding. And full exhale. Letting it all go. Letting it all go. And focusing inside on maybe a thought or a memory. Maybe on something that no longer serves. Maybe letting go of a what if, or a component that felt uncomfortable. Maybe it was something said, or not done. And seeing that in my mind's eye. And saying, I forgive myself. I let it go. I release all that no longer serves. And I allow the space for grace. And I keep within me the love, the light, and the beautiful memories that are woven into my tapestry within. And with intention, I open up my heart to receive grace for the light to enter the cracked heart. Breathing that into you. Breathing in grace and allowance. And exhaling the release of anything that no longer serves you. And we come back to the candle. And then gently, with intention, I take in the light, I take in the love, and I simply let it go by blowing it out. And I come back. And we ask for peace to enter the heart. Let peace be here in the heart. And so it is. And so it is. Blessings and peace to your beautiful hearts. Thank you so much for listening. And if you would like to support my work, I'm grateful for your donations, and thank you to those who have donated. You'll find the link at the end here. I appreciate that so much. Thank you.